You don't need to Skype in, no.
If you wanted to practice going in just so you know how to do your church forms, but I did watch the video.
Okay, but turn off your volume to get to
I'm in my ELDB assistance notebook online, and it says it's going to work. Where am I supposed to be?
Get into the, are you going to get into the Skype event?
No, just to get, I thought there was something to really put, like what we were talking about.
Oh, it's in the meeting invite.
Oh, it's not in the notebook where
No.
I just
Yes, I am. Yeah, people.
Okay, gotcha. I think we have everyone here that's going to be here.
Okay. Then, all right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm hoping that everybody around the district.
Let's get rid of that.
Somebody's
That's
not.
what for me to find.
Brittany, and yep, oh, I got her. All right. If you're not muted, or if you come off mute, up in the top left-hand corner, you'll probably see that you can mute your own mic. So if you come off mute, you could go back on mute. Very easy. If you've got something, a comment you want to make, I can bring you off. If you've got something you want to say, I can bring you off mute, or just type it in the chat, and we'll get to those questions as soon as we can. First of all, I want to thank everybody for their time with this meeting, but also time volunteering to be part of the TAT team, because I know that this is probably a thankless job in a lot of ways. So we appreciate it, because we wouldn't be able to get what we're getting done without your guys' help. So the other thing I wanted to mention is we are recording this. So if you have any problems, or if anything cuts out on you, we're going to post it to YouTube, and you can go back and watch it later. If there's anything that you want to get information about, you can do that as well. So let's just dive into the agenda, and I've left some time for questions as well. But I want to start with probably the item that we have the most tickets on right now, which is the wireless display or action tech items that we have. We have a lot of tickets, and it's a known issue that we are getting cutouts in the video and sound. We have been working with Microsoft and with Action Tech to try to figure out what's going on with that. And let me show you what we have discovered at this point. Yep, I should be recording. So, so what we're seeing here is we are seeing in a building like this, if you've got a hallway going down the middle, we've got 6 classrooms here maybe. And Tim and I did quite a bit of work last week. Starting in a classroom like right here. And we did this after school, and what we found is that classroom, the Action Tech worked great. We showed a YouTube video for about 15 minutes. We had no lag. We had no problems at all. When we connected this classroom right here to her Action Tech, both of them started lagging drastically. As soon as we cut this one off, this one went back to not having any problems. We truly believe that the problem we're having right now is an interference. We bought these Action Techs because they're supposed to auto channel. So this one is not supposed to pick the same channel as this one over here, and this room is supposed to pick a different one. I can prove through that test that we did that these things are not auto channeling. Right now, Microsoft is blaming Action Tech, and Action Tech is blaming Microsoft. So we're not getting anywhere necessarily with the two companies. So here's what we are doing in the meantime. We have bought 500 dongles so that people can plug in their screens that way. And we are going to start getting those out to buildings. Our thought would be that not everybody always has to use the dongle, but if you've got a dongle one place, then you wouldn't have issues in another place, so that that interference issue would probably go away after time. We're going to keep working with Action Tech. They believe that there is another update for the wireless drivers coming out, and so we're kind of waiting for that, but nobody knows when those are going to come out. I said at the media specialist meeting that we weren't going to tell everybody to do the new firmware updates, but now it looks like we are going to start asking people to do those at some point through Windows updates. But we'll get those out. We've had some people do them. We'll get information out. And actually, it's a pretty big update, but the new firmware has some really cool features. So it may not be a bad thing to do just in case later. So that's kind of what we've got going on with Action Tech, and I'm assuming they were getting the dongles from Amazon. They had 198 in stock. We should have those by the end of the week, and we'll just split them up by building. So every building will get a few this week. They think they'll get the other however many by Wednesday of next week or Thursday of next week, and then as soon as we get those, we'll divide those out to buildings as well, and have 500 out there for buildings to use, so at least they can plug in as we troubleshoot through this problem. Any questions about Action Tech items? Because I know that's been one of those things. We've probably got 30 tickets on it, and I know that that's one of those things a lot of people are struggling with right now. Yes, Lana, you guys don't need the dongles because you've got the HDMI cables. So yes, you're absolutely right. Um, okay, one of the other things that's coming up is iPad management and self-service. Um, we decided a while ago to do um, self-service through Casper, and I've got Tim Soretta here, so he'd be able to address any questions on this a little bit more. But the idea is that we push out apps to self-service, and then people can go back in and get the apps. Originally, we did that because of how granular we get with apps across the district. Some districts say, here are 75 apps, and we're just going to put them on every iPad. But what we have found is at Papillion, we've got people who say, well, I want 10 apps on these 10 iPads, but not on these 10 iPads. And so we've gotten very granular. So we were trying to put that into the hands of the teachers to say, okay, just go in and get whatever apps you want on whatever iPads. The problem with that is it is also very time consuming then if you're trying to install the same app on all 100 iPads. So Tim and I have talked, and we think that if we can come to some consensus about here are the apps that everybody uses across the district, we know that these 50 apps should be on every iPad or these 30 apps should be on every iPad. We can push those out to every iPad and then use self-service for the other things. But that's about as granular as we're going to be able to get without just saying, okay, having a full-time person sitting at Casper saying, okay, I'm going to push these apps out to these 10 and these apps out to these 20. So I guess the question is, how is self-service working for people? Is it working for people? And what apps do you think we could work with? How do we get that list to know what we can push out everywhere? And if anybody's got a thought, I can definitely unmute you. And if anybody here has a thought, we've got a mic. I'll hold it up so you can be heard.
One thought is we know we have about 15 apps that we know are used frequently. If we send that app list out to all of the TAP members, and they wanted to throw a couple others on there, that general list could be pushed out to all iPads automatically, and then any other ones on top of that could just be accessed through self-service.
Through self-service.
So unless anyone has any objections, that's one way that we could do it. And just have the TAT team add any to that, but that would be district-wide. So apps that are consistently used across classrooms in their buildings.
Yeah, I like Anna's idea too, Melissa. Meg had a great thought here. Why don't I mute us for just a second? And Meg had suggested that everybody could talk for 2 minutes or so and see what their thoughts are. But I like the direction Anna's saying here. And somebody else put on Think Central. I absolutely agree with that because we need to get that pushed out to all iPads, and then maps testing would need to get pushed out probably to all iPads as well. So, oh, sorry, Meg. Anna is saying that she thinks we could come. We've got 15 or so. We could start that list and then add to that list. These groups could add to that list as well. So I'm going to mute for a second. You get I muted too soon. I'm going to mute real quick, and everybody can kind of have a conversation to see what they think about the best way to get the apps collected.
And have them, just let them, we always use the same grade ones, because they know. Now we're gonna done. I'm trying.
No iTunes account or password or anything.
So I just unmuted here, and to kind of summarize the conversation we were having here, part of I think what we're running into a couple issues here. First of all, it's too much for one person to manage, and so Anna provided some creative ways to manage the self-service piece. Things like, what did you say, Anna? Using kids to do it.
Kids from Kids Club after school.
Kids from Kids Club after school. Doing teacher groups maybe where the iPads are managed in different hallways, so then the teachers kind of can help manage it. But we do agree that we're hearing that some buildings, it's all falling down on one person, and it is a lot of work for a single person to manage 100 iPads in a building and every app that goes on that as well.
And what we're hearing as best practice from other school districts around the country is that it's an important skill for students to be able to go and search for apps and use different features like that. So if a teacher is wanting to use an app that isn't installed on them, just showing students how to navigate to self-service, search for the app, and install. Because with self-service, there are no iTunes accounts or passwords or anything like that. Self-service is just basically a local app store with district supported apps. So it's something that each class could do, and with every student on an iPad, it takes just a couple of minutes to install all of those in one shot.
One of the other pieces of the conversation that I heard here is not everybody realizes how self-service works. And Tim, that's in the MTM?
Correct.
Okay, so there is a video about how self-service works, and maybe that's where we need to start, is if everybody gets a chance to look at that. It would probably be easier to make a decision about how we move forward with apps in the future once people understand what self-service looks like and how to manage that. We did have a question that came up previously, and I'm going to answer this probably incorrectly, but Tim's here to correct anything I say. We had a question about licensing. So we've purchased apps in the past, and previously, if you bought an app, there was nothing there to really monitor. I spend $1.99 on this app and I buy 10, but I put it on 12, for instance. Well, that's not true anymore. With Casper, they have a way to monitor that, and so if we need 12, we have to buy 12. So if you've got some from the past, we're going to end up buying more licenses. Is that correct, Tim?
Correct, yep.
So don't be surprised if Tim goes in and looks and says, well, you want this pushed out and you're going to put it on every iPad, but you only have 10 copies and you've got 90 iPads. So that is going to be a cost to buildings that you're going to have to work with your principal to kind of figure out how are we going to pay that. Any other thoughts? I think we've answered most of the questions in here about self-service. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to make sure we hit was, Liz is asking the question. I think that Tim and Anna probably will be and Caitlin will work on that initial list and then get it out to buildings from there, and we'll see what we can get put together. The last thing before we hit some questions, and I had some people email me over the weekend a couple things that they wanted to talk about as well. Maps testing and Journeys app. We right now have uploaded students to Map and to Journeys. The auto upload of students to Journeys is not done, so we've got an initial load of students, but students aren't coming in all the time. We are pushing out the apps through self-service for map testing and journey testing. I think both of those are in self-service. Is that correct, Tim? Map and Journeys? Yep. So, and then I think what I heard here is Journeys should definitely be a part of the 15 that we put on every iPad, so that it's and then Maps will be there too. And I'm not sure how many buildings are actually going to use the iPads for map testing. But it will be there in case anybody wants to use it. And I think there's some more training that's coming out on those in the next week or so. I think tomorrow is a training for train the trainers for the map testing. The one thing that we do want this group to look at is as you use the laptops, if you guys would just kind of look around to make sure that Maps icon is there and the Journeys icon is there, and I can send out what those icons look like. We started pushing that out last week, and a lot of people were canceling the install. So we've now made that so it's a silent, so people don't see it. It's happening without them noticing it. But you're going to want to make sure that you've got it on enough machines, and it didn't get canceled out when people were trying to run it. It should run every time you log off and log on to the computer. You should get that installer as well. So. reading through some questions here.
We had one from Lindsay Steer. They use the VGA cables from before to connect the action text to the projectors. How can they get more VGA cables?
Oh, that's an excellent question. We'll have to look around the office to see how many VGA cables we have. We don't have 500, that's for sure. So I'm hoping that, I don't know the answer to that one right now. Let me see what I can round up in our building, and if every building could kind of look around to see what they've got for VGA cables as well. Yeah, and how many you need per building, and let us know. We'll try to get you as many as we can for the VGA cables. Okay, so one of the questions that came in actually just over the weekend was about MOV files. So here is what's happening with MOV files. Evidently, there are some DVDs that are out there that have MOV files, and they used to play in QuickTime. We no longer install QuickTime onto the computers, and the reason we don't install QuickTime on the computers is Apple no longer supports QuickTime, and there's a pretty big security hole, and they've just said they're not patching the hole. So we no longer put QuickTime on computers. What we did was we put this VLC media player on instead. So that VLC media player, yeah, is not on the Surfaces because this came out. Good catch, Tim. That's part of the confusion here is the Surfaces still have QuickTime, but the student computers have this VLC media player. So the question you're probably asking yourself, and I need to show this here. Let me present my screen. The question you're probably asking yourself is, okay, if I don't have VLC media player on my machine, how do I get that? Well, some of you might remember this, but every computer has something called Ninite on it, and Ninite will let you install third-party pieces of software. So if you just go down into your toolbar here and type C:, it's going to open up your C drive, and in your C drive there's this folder called Ninite. And if you run Ninite Pro, it's going to come up with all these third-party pieces of software. And here's why we want people to use this instead of going out to like Adobe to install Adobe Reader. Because when you go to Adobe to install Adobe Reader, it puts toolbars and a bunch of junk all over your computer. Ninite installs no junk on your computer. So if I want to install Flash and Java and .NET.
We don't have your screen.
Oh, you can't see the screen? I wonder. Let me go back and present here. Still nothing?
There it is. Oh,
Got it?
for a second.
If we click desktop twice, it was up there. It looks like you get desktop there.
All right, let's try that again. It doesn't seem like it's refreshing on everybody's screen. We do have a video on Ninite, so if this doesn't work, we can send that out too. But for those of you, so in Ninite is VLC. So if you find that, you just say install, and then it'll install VLC on your machine. So you don't need to go find it anywhere. Every teacher has rights, as long as you have admin rights, every teacher has rights to put VLC on their computer. So that's a quick way to get VLC if you want it. And once it's installed, it should look something like this icon right here. And nobody...
When you go to Windows P, I wonder if it's extending instead of.
Well, I've got no. My screen has the bar around it, like that's what it's presenting.
We just see all of it. Your mouse is moving, but we can't see your background not showing.
Okay. We'll send out the information on 9 nights to make sure everybody's got that. The other thing that came up was a meeting for next month. And I swear to you that not every month is going to be this boring. When we start a new year, we have a lot of things that come up. So I know there are a lot of conferences. We should be on the 4th next month, but I've heard that a lot of buildings have conferences on that day. Um, we're looking at the 11th, and I think 1 or 2 buildings still have conferences on the 11th, but it seems like less buildings are affected if we go for the 11th. Is there any thoughts about that?
We have conferences on the fourth, so.
So the 11th would be better here. See, yeah, it looks like the 11th is what makes sense for everybody. So, and again, we get that things come up. So that's why we're recording all these meetings. It gives you an opportunity to go back and watch them. Really, for today, the big things are watch for those dongles to come in. We're still working on that, but we'll get dongles out to all the buildings. And then self-service, we're going to get a list out to buildings so that you guys can start going through that list and see what makes sense to get put on every iPad, and then we'll expand self-service from there. And then watch for journeys and maps, because maps testing starts in about 2 weeks, and that's one of our fears, is not getting a chance to check every computer. So as computers are out, just look for that icon on the desktop and make sure it looks right. So anything else, any other questions people have about the first 3 weeks or so? All right, then I'm going to stop the recording, and everybody can use this video to fall asleep to later tonight. And I look forward to next month, but if you have any questions, just email the help desk and we'll get those answered for you. So thanks everybody for jumping on.